Okay, so we're live.
Sweet. Cool.
Great.
We are
Okay.
definitely live. I see it now.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Hi everybody. I hope this is live. Otherwise, I'm talking to
I see the
literally.
live. It's live. I see it in the
I think
corner.
we finally
Okay.
figured everything out.
All right. Hi everybody. It's Sajid. If you're new here, which I'm sure you're not, my name is Sajid. This is my channel. And we are doing a live show for the Bashment Book Club, which is a Caribbean book club hosted
Yeah.
by myself and my two Caribbean friends. So I'm Sajid. I'm from Trinidad, and I will let the others
And we are doing
introduce themselves.
Sup, I'm Paige. I am from Barbados originally, and right now I live in Canada. And I suffer cold weather all the time, and I regret all my decisions about moving. Nice to meet you.
And I'm Linnell. I'm from the Virgin Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and I currently live in Florida. And I love spending time with my Caribbean peeps.
Honestly, necessary. I never realized how much I don't talk about Caribbean things until we started our group chat, and then I was like, oh, this is what it's like to have Caribbean friends.
Well, I know what it's like because I live only in the Caribbean, so I only have Caribbean friends. But my Caribbean friends are limited to just Trinidadians, though, so it's nice to kind of have a little bit more variety.
Mm. And we argue about things like, is it rice or peas and rice?
Peas and
Which is
rice.
very important. You are wrong, and you're allowed to be wrong.
Well, Guyana and Trinidad are forever in war about whether it's chicken curry or curry chicken.
It's
So
curry chicken.
Yep, I agree with that one.
Trinidadians say curry chicken, so thank you. The Guyanese up there by themselves, they have to negotiate that.
I'm so glad that this is the one thing we could all come to a consensus on. Good job, guys.
That's curry chicken.
Okay, so the book we're discussing today is Here Comes the Sun. There, he has the pretty copy, so
This is
pay
the
attention
pretty
to that
UK
one.
copy.
Yeah,
And they have the
and
US one.
yeah, it's not as nice. It's okay.
Yeah.
This book was a lot, as Sajid had said in our little chat before. It is a sad-driven book rather than a plot-driven book. It leaves you feeling very depressed when you finish it because there's no happy ending.
No
If you
happy
like
ending.
books with happy endings, this is not it. It's like, go away, find another book. It follows a family in Jamaica. It's set I think it was the 90s. Not sure. It could be the 80s. But
90s, yeah,
it's really
1994
fun.
was the year.
The year I was born. Perfect. So it follows this family in Jamaica. They live in this shanty-ish town, and they're near a hotel. The one sister, Margot, who is the provider of the family, she works at the hotel, but she also performs prostitution because she needs to make money for her sister, Tandy, who is in school. And Tandy's sort of struggling being under the pressure of being the ticket out of this small town. Her mother and her sister really want her to, I think it's to become a doctor or something, but she's in school. They put all this pressure on her to do well so that she can provide for them later in life. So it's sort of their struggles living in a town that's becoming gentrified as a new hotel is coming into the situation. And it deals with prostitution and tourism and how that affects people living on islands. And I don't really think it's a plot-driven book. I think it was more the author trying to explore societal issues in the Caribbean and using this family as a lens for us to see these issues through. Is that a good summary, guys? I don't know.
That was a cute
That's
summary. That was perfect.
Thank you.
That was fantastic.
We would spend the whole live show if I was summarizing it, so that was great.
And then this happened, and there's a lot of heartbreaking stuff that happens in this book.
Yeah.
So what did you guys think overall reading this, besides the fact that it was super depressing? Wow, I asked it and nobody replied. Okay, cool.
So I think there was a point in the story that I was trying to root for Margot. Because I was like, I feel like I know Margot's of the world, trying to do the best, even though her decision making is really preservation. But yeah, I still didn't like her towards the end. She just became everything that she said she didn't want to be. And the mom, I definitely know Dolores is of the world, right?
Yeah.
Old school Caribbean mother with very traditional, conservative, toxic values, that tries to instill that in your children. So I think what I appreciated the most about the book is that the characters were relatable. Like I knew someone in each of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
For me, when I was reading it, I was thinking about like, because I'm a student of gender studies, so my mind is always like on structures and systems and societal systems. And for me, this was a story about four women who are struggling with oppressive systems, that they are kind of faced with the choice of either resisting those systems or going against the grain, or trying to climb the ladder up within that system. And we saw that a lot, especially with not so much Vidine, but with Margot, Tandy, and Dolores. You know, Dolores was trying to get money so that they could become richer, and Margot was trying to, you know, attain a higher position in the hotel, and Tandy was trying to lighten her skin and all that kind of stuff. So for me, it was a story about them trying to achieve status in some way, trying to alleviate themselves from the oppression that they face by like trying to uplift themselves within the system as opposed to go against the grain, because going against the grain is actually a lot harder. But we saw that more with Verdine. She was the one who was kind of more unapologetic about who she was, and kind of affirmed in herself as a gay woman. So I found that aspect of the book to be really interesting, and that's why I didn't really hate any of the characters. I did dislike Dolores the most, but I didn't really like hate them because I see what they're going through as something systematic, as you know, there are wider structures existing that cause people to behave like this and to live like this. And I think that's what this book was really trying to illustrate to us.
I felt like there was definitely a theme of like them trying to break the circle in some ways, because Margot talking about the fact that she's trying to protect Sandy from being abused sexually by men, but this has already happened, and we as readers know that it's happened because we've seen Sandy's perspective. Like when I kept reading that, I was like, Margot's trying to protect her from something, but it's something that's already happened. Like there's an inevitability to the stuff that was happening in the book, because it's a circle that people don't want to break if they have power.
But I think to your point that when you've been in an oppressed state, sometimes you become the oppressor, right? And so and that's what happened to Margot. She became essentially a pimp, right? And and the only time you saw her disconnect is when I don't know if this will be a spoiler, but when she sees her sister in the same environment that she's trying to protect from. So, but what I thought was not explained really well was if Dolores knew how much did she know about Tandy's assault. That felt like, did she know or did she assume and she just didn't say anything about it?
I don't think she knew about Tandy. She definitely knew about all the Margot stuff, which was that severe. Like I wasn't like either way about Dolores in the beginning. I was like, whatever, she's an unlikable character, very abusive. But it was the moment when we discovered that she willingly gave Margot to somebody else. I was just like, oh, you're like genuinely just a horrible person.
Right.
You took it a step too far. Like, and then she gets upset when the money's taken by the Dolores was just a trash human. And that was one of the questions I wanted to ask, was if you thought Dolores was redeemable in any way, because there is the one scene of her facing colorism when she's younger, to the Devon house or whatever it was, and everybody's making fun of her, and like that was the one moment I felt like pity for her. But
I think I could be compassionate towards the lived experiences of some of the trauma that she might have experienced. However, like she made conscious decisions to put her daughters in really unsafe environments for the sake of assumed financial stability.
And I think too, I agree with you. And just because she might have gone through certain things that might have led her to do what she did to her daughters, not much people would actually do that to their daughter, no matter
Right.
how poor you are, no matter how scared you are, because the reason why she did a quote unquote full Caribbean woman would just do that to their
Yeah.
daughter. So I definitely think that, even according to wider systems and structures, as I said, she still hasn't what she's done to her daughters. And to me, that's why I don't think she's a redeemable character either. I agree I could be compassionate with why she ended up being the way she is, but I could never empathize with Holly to her daughters, especially Margot.
Yeah. I think the only character that I feel like could no well I guess what's the boyfriend's name?
Charlie.
Yeah.
My sweet bean Charlie.
I don't know why I was thinking Chucky. Well, whatever. I feel like his character was interesting, right? Because
Yeah.
Chucky at one point, the sister called him Chucky at one point.
Oh, okay. So I thought his character was interesting because in some ways, right, he had like a dual role of trying to lure Tandy into this, I guess, relationship. But then he was really interesting because he wanted to make sure that she consented. But I feel like their relationship was still odd because then once he found out about I can't remember. It's another C character who assaulted her.
Oh, yeah.
He just went off the rails and used violence, right? Mm-hmm. Even though she specifically said not to do anything. And I think like sometimes, when you feel like you become this protector, you take the voice away from the victim, right? And so his character, I was like, oh, I like him. And then I was like, ooh.
Yeah, that entire bit. But I feel like that also was just showing the toxic masculinity that is present in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
That was very present throughout the entire book.
Oh, my
Clover, yes. But yeah, I feel like that was just also thoroughly like a theme she was exploring was the toxic masculinity and how that impacts like the homophobia present and double standard for how like a woman liking a woman is something seen that as fixable because like the way the woman Verdine is caught with how she is raped by a bunch of men because they assume that once she has this bomb dick, she's apparently going to turn straight.
Right.
And with men, it's seen automatically like it's something that is irreversible. Like this masculinity aspect as soon as something threatens masculinity.
Right. And you use violence to confront it. What was Miss Jamaica's name? She had.
Oh Lord, I don't remember names. I'm very bad.
I thought I wrote it down. Because now, was her character also a lesbian or was she bisexual?
That's what.
What is her name? Nova Scott Henry.
Yeah.
Because again, like. So I feel like this is one of the drawbacks of the book. Like she dropped in characters, I guess, to move the story along and maybe even present some mystery or complexity. But then the characters just, once they serve their purpose, they go away completely. And it's just like, so was it just to create a scandal? So
yeah, that entire plot felt unnecessary with Miss Jamaica. Like the only thing it really did was make Margot even more obsessed with gaining power.
Right. And this is, I think, the first time where that whole, when she uses sweetness, how she used her, I was like, yeah, this is going to in a direction where she's not going to be able to redeem herself.
Yeah.
But it's
Margot.
Yeah. I feel like it's also a question of if any of these characters were supposed to be redeemable, or if she was just showing us like the impact and like how bad it can get for some people.
Yeah, I don't like that. Yeah, I
realize
to
that
see some growth. I want to see some, changes. I just don't want to continue to dislike you even more as the story goes along,
Yeah, I think that's what she was probably trying to do, and that's why it's probably well with all the readers is like, because for a lot of people who go through some of these problems, they're definitely and like enjoyment of the story. So I can definitely see why you might like it, why you might dislike it for that reason. But for me, I don't know. I was very indifferent towards that. I didn't like it. I also didn't dislike it.
Who didn't you dislike?
The story, like how you said that, it it would have been better if there was some growth, or if there was some like redeemable qualities to the characters. And I was just saying that maybe the author just didn't want to go down that road, because she probably wanted to highlight that for some people these
we lost Sajid.
Oh no.
Oh my god. Well, it's just the two of us now as we wait for him to return. But I think he was saying like the author she didn't care about redeeming his return people.
Welcome back.
I was having like such bad connection problems. I think I was behind on y'all.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I gave.
I feel like
told y'all this was gonna be an
this
interesting
is just
live
a show.
show.
We're just a mess, and it's fine. It's who we are. We accept it.
Well, more people are joining the show, so I feel like
they're here to see the trash fire that we are, and I love it.
It's very fragrant trash fire, okay?
My question for y'all, do you think Tandy is being ungrateful when she, like, there's a privilege to being able to choose love over everything. So
it's very well seasoned trash fire.
I love, like, there's like a slight lag. It's beautiful.
So here's the thing. I think she was what, 14, 15?
So this lag is like ruining my life.
We believe in you. We believe in this lag that it will end.
Oh, go back.
Okay, we'll wait on you.
It's the same making
We'll
sense.
try to keep the crowd entertained.
If I hang up, it wouldn't like.
Did he hang up?
Stop, because it's my. If I hang up, then it will stop the broadcast because it's my channel, I think.
I don't know.
Wait, y'all hearing me?
I don't know, but.
Okay, no, the lag's still there then.
I'm here for this. This is beautiful. Well, we have you, Sajid. What do you think
this
of
is
Tandy?
Fun. Thank God only 9 people watching. And I'm one of those 9 people.
It's me.
Okay, I'm going to start to talk about Tandy. So just let me have a Tandy monologue. Tandy's story I found was kind of interesting because of colorism, and that's something that I think about a lot because that's something that's very prevalent among Indo-Caribbean people. And interestingly, Tandy is half Indian, half Indo-Jamaican,
Mm-hmm.
which I found interesting. And usually, like somebody who is, I mean, it's very common to be half Indian, half Black in Trinidad, but in Jamaica, that's probably a little bit more rare because there's a smaller amount of Indians in Jamaica, like a real small minority. So if you're half Indian, you kind of could benefit from privilege because being mixed, you might, look a little less quote unquote Black. But with Tandy, it was interesting because I noticed that people always praised her for her long, curly, you know,
Mm-hmm.
mixed race hair, but yet she had the dark skin, and that was seen as kind of like a contrast to that. So I think with her in particular, there was this extra pressure to lighten her skin so that she could kind of meet up with the standards of her hair, if that makes sense. And also not just her hair, but the fact that she's kind of different from the rest of the girls in Riverbanks, and she's going to school and she could afford this education, and she's also fancy and smart, that she felt like she had to kind of keep up with a particular standard, and the only thing that was holding her back, in addition to her lower class background, was her skin color. So I really liked that Nicole Dennisman touched on colorism, because that's such a huge problem here. I see it every day. That's one of the things that I related to the most in this novel. You're looking too black, don't go out in the sun, stay inside, use some lightening cream on your face. Actually, when I was younger, I internalized that a lot, and I used to use this cream called Fair and Handsome, and spoiler alert, it did not make me fair and it did not make me handsome, right? So that shit did not work on my face, and it's actually the male version to Fair and Lovely, which is an even more it's basically the same cream, but they put one
He was doing so well. And it looks like he's going off too.
bottle called Fair and Handsome, because toxic masculinity, men not gonna buy something called Fair and Lovely, but it kind of interesting.
Yeah, so I think with Tandy, for me,
this.
Oh, okay. So with Tandy, I thought, when, well, I don't know if you know, but what I thought was interesting is that she had a different type of struggle, right? And sometimes when you don't have like that hardcore struggle, like how Margot had it, sometimes you do become a little bratty, right? Like you assume like you should have these experiences, or the struggle is too difficult. Meanwhile, right, Margot had like a whole different experience, and she was trying to give her these opportunities. Do I think she was bratty though? No, because she's a child.
Exactly.
She doesn't have, in my opinion, the development to know any better. And the environment that she was in, either her mother was yelling at her and having all of these unrealistic expectations, and then her sister, who was supposed to be a fill-in parent, was missing. So she was almost figuring out life on her own. Do I think she could have made better decisions? Sure, but she also was traumatized at 9. So I think nobody had like a good starting point to make good decisions.
And I think also like Nicole Dennis Benn was showing like the privilege behind being able to choose love over something else. Because in this situation, she really doesn't have the privilege to be like, okay, she wants to be with Charles. She should be trying to provide for her family if that means leaving him behind. And I was sort of like, yeah, just the idea of like there's a privilege to being able, like we romanticize the idea of romantic love
right
so much in the West. Like we don't realize that for some people
I think I'm back.
Thank God.
Oh, hi again. Oh my God,
It's just like perpetually you reintroducing yourself.
But the image is so much clearer.
Oh, it's
so
so
whatever
better.
You,
really?
Yeah. So whatever you're doing, keep doing that.
I disconnected my internet again. The same thing I did last time.
Well, we know now if you hang up, we can still keep going. So
Okay. Well, Ed actually didn't hang up. Once I disconnect, the window is still there, the hangout window. So, but if I hang up, then the hangout window, I guess, will come down or something.
Okay. Well, don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, I won't do that. I won't. I promise.
Yeah. So who else did we not cover?
I think Verdine, really, we haven't discussed her entire tragic backstory. The only person I really liked in this entire book was Verdine.
Verdine.
Oh my gosh.
Like, from the beginning, she was just being dealt difficult cards with the people leaving dead dogs in her front yard.
Dolores was leaving the dead dog.
I know.
You think so? Was it Dolores?
It was. They revealed in the end that it was Dolores. Yeah.
Crazy bitch.
Yeah. That was another thing that made me went like, oh gosh, Dolores, you already done all these annoying, evil things, and you're going putting dead dog in the woman yard?
Like, these poor dogs
going crazy. Right?
Yes.
Isn't that her mother? Miss Ruby? No. Did I make that up?
Miss Ruby lives next door, no?
Well,
her mother was Miss Ella. Her mother was Miss Ella.
Oh, okay. So, but didn't she go a little, she was having shakes or something towards the end?
Shakes?
I actually don't remember.
I thought when they were arguing, when Dolores and Margot were arguing about Tandy, the mother was there and she was like rocking back and forth. Yeah.
Oh, that was the grandmother. That's who's Dolores' mom.
Right. Yeah. So I was just like, man. But I feel like there's always one person in the community that's outcast, and we create like this whole storyline behind them. They're a witch, cowfoot lady. Do you have a cowfoot lady? We had a cowfoot lady. I don't know what that means, but in my elementary school, there was a cowfoot lady, and she would steal children.
Oh,
I grew up on a family street, so nobody, it was not going to find nobody calling nobody a witch, because then they would come up in the auntie house and all kind of family bacchanal was going to happen. I'm going to tell you, Indo-Caribbean people could be a different brand when they're ready. But yeah, I think that whole stereotype of this person being the witch or that one person, the outcast in the community, is actually a very, very common thing. Not just in the Caribbean, but you see it a lot in Caribbean literature. Like every time I'm reading a book, there's always that one old lady down the road who's the witch. You know, because she old and she don't have no man, and you don't know what's going on in she house, and she have this black cat or something like that. She always have some kind of animal, you know, and she's kind of like the witch. And I guess I like this because it kind of gave you the perspective of that person and gave that person a voice.
Yeah, it also like showed how subtle sometimes the homophobia can be. And like not subtle because that dog is not subtle at all, but like the small things people will do. They'll avoid you completely, but they'll also like leave these little symbolisms. It's also very based in like Christianity. That homophobia they use it as like a shield.
Yeah, and what was interesting too is the difference you see in the way queer men are treated versus queer women. And you were touching on that a bit earlier, but it was interesting because, you know, gay men are, you know, they're not, in addition to, you know, beating and killing gay men versus raping gay women to fix them or whatever, you saw how, you know, there was this kind of, when the guy was about to punch her and then the old lady came and was like, don't hit a woman, but she was still being, you know, and then the whole calling her a witch and seeing her, somebody practicing witchcraft and somebody doing it, this really shows you the kind of particular types of, you know, abuse that a gay woman would face versus a gay man. And usually when we talk about homophobia in Jamaica, you often talk about men because of things like the gully queens and all these different stuff. So it's interesting to also see that from a queer woman's perspective. And Nicole Dennis Ben is gay, so it was nice to know that was also like an own voices kind of a representation as well. We know that came from an authentic place. So I was happy that that was there, and I was happy how everything just kind of blend together and tied together, and didn't feel like if Ben was just trying to tick off boxes like, oh, homophobia, colorism,
Yeah.
this, that, and the other. She might not have been the best at it, like it wasn't the best, coagulation of everything. But for a first novel, I think she puts it together in a good way that flowed.
It felt very authentic, even like the small details, like when she would use like little descriptions instead of saying wildfire, she'd be like, it spread like cane fire. Like little details like that. And then when she was describing the white Jamaican men and how they talk and how it's like just on the edge of patois because they want to be a little bit relatable to the common man. Little things like that. I was like, you could tell it was written by a Caribbean.
White people in Trinidad do that too.
Yeah.
Like the 1%. We call them the 1%. And it's like they have this very particular type of accent, and the accent is actually becoming very popular amongst Indian and Black Trinidadians as well. And oh my God, it's so annoying sometimes. I'm gagged when I hear people talking like that.
Didn't that come up in Seven Killings too?
Probably, yeah. I feel like because Marlon James is also from Jamaica, and he also is writing about the queer experience in some of his work. So I feel like there's a little bit of intersection.
Yeah.
Even though he doesn't shy away. Like there was violence in this book, but his is like a lot more on the page. Does not shy away. Shows everything as is. Like, yeah.
For sure. You know what I think the book does well is that, and I think we were kind of talking about it, where the Caribbean is seen as this pristine, illusion. However, the people who are living there sometimes are like experiencing absolute poverty or just having really harsh lives. And you come in, you exploit the resources, and then you leave. And not trying to shame anyone for vacations. I'm always trying to figure out where I can go next. But that understanding of like, you're in this luxury hotel and the people who are taking care of you might not even have a flushing toilet. And there was an owl house in the...
Yeah.
And I was just like, really? But then I was just like, of course. Like, I'm coming from a place of privilege because we lived in a house with all of the modern amenities. But I think that part, that dual perspective of this imaginary world that we try to create when we tell people to come to the Caribbean, meanwhile these horrible things are happening. And I guess you could say that to be the case anywhere, but I think it's really prevalent in the Caribbean.
Someone in the group chat was like, facts. I don't know. Thank you, CHD1648. That is a username. When you were talking about that, Linnell, it kind of made me think about I've seen this in a couple different like writings and stuff about the Caribbean and about sexuality, and in the Caribbean and a lot of other global South countries, but especially countries that are fetishized as like these island paradises and stuff, they tend to be feminized in a way for the bigger countries, the bigger white majority countries, to kind of come and consume and to kind of come and exploit. And that's kind of the same thing that they're doing with women's bodies when they come here. And that's what the book shows you, the connection between tourism and sex work, and not just that tourism is a platform for sex work to happen, but it's actually the same thing happening between different like parties. In one case it's humans, and in the other case it's countries. And I found that kind of interesting. And we could also talk about just like the regular fact that Caribbean people have to deal with questions like, oh, so you didn't grow up going to the beach every day, and you didn't swing on vines, and you didn't grow up in a hut, and oh, how did you get internet? I didn't know y'all have internet down there, which might be a true stereotype considering how my connection is right now. So I don't think I'm helping out the situation there, but it's like I play this game called Wizard 101, and you meet people from all over the world. I was telling this guy, I'm from Trinidad, and he was like, oh, that's so cool. But how are you getting internet to play Wizard 101? And I was like,
rude. Dummy.
Honestly,
Well, obviously I'm getting it because I wouldn't be here. Like
imagine.
my hut has coconut milk Wi-Fi or something, you know.
I love that they made Tandy not be able to swim because that is very accurate for a lot of people. Like even in Barbados, my cousins didn't know how to swim.
I don't know how to
I
swim
don't know how
either.
to swim.
I don't know how to swim. I hate the ocean.
And people
I
are
hate.
like, "You live on an island. How you not know how to swim?" And I'm like,
Easy. You
people
just
don't have
don't
time to
learn.
go learn. Like,
They think that the island is so small that we'll just fall off one day into the ocean. Like you'll be sitting on your desk at school and you'll just fall off into the ocean. Oh God.
yeah, like the whole idea, like we go to the beach every day, and like this is a paradise for us. We're so lucky to live on this island, but they don't realize they're like
Minimum
the
wage.
very like and the very like different like class is so rigidly defined because there's such a distance between like what upper class people
rich.
make.
Yep.
Yeah, like, it's.
I tried to look up. I think a family in the U.S. Virgin Islands, the annual income the last time I looked was $28,000. I'm like, how sway when a gallon of milk is $8?
Don't even get me started. In Barbados, they just raised the price of bus fare to $3.50, and minimum wage I think is like $6 something.
Yeah,
per hour, and that's like half your like little things like that people don't think about because they're are so dependent on tourism as an industry to make money, but also they exploit us when they come.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you're expected to kind of shut up and be grateful, because tourism is going to help and save the Caribbean, and it's been saving the Caribbean when that's not true, right? Like the other day, there was supposed to be a sandals resort being built in Tobago, and they actually canceled it, and the whole country was up in arms. It was like, oh my God, that could have brought in so much money, and we could have developed more, and it could have contributed to the economy. And I was like, listen, sis, they could have built that resort, and all of y'all would have still be as broke as y'all is now.
right.
So I don't really understand. You know, we just have this mentality that once some kind of tourism thing happens, then money will come and everybody will be happier and the country will be greater, which, as we've historically seen, is not the case. And it also happened in Trinidad when actually the same thing happened. A bunch of farmers who were farming on government-owned land, but it was sanctioned for them to farm on the land. They were gentrified basically because they wanted to build some kind of water park. And I'm like, just go to the beach where you want a water park for.
Honestly, a water park seems like the stupidest idea.
So it's really funny. I think we need to clarify gentrification for the Caribbean looks like outside people coming in and buying up land and not allowing locals who, indigenous or not, right, use the land. So like building on beaches or
privatizing beaches specifically, like so that locals can't even use them. Like,
what is that, right? Or buying up land that's been in families, because you know in the Caribbean, land is currency. So if you have land, and all of these people coming in, I can't remember the last time I went home. I was just like, wait a minute, this used to be, I can't remember what the guy's name, Shanty, and it's not there anymore. It's like bulldozed over. You can barely get to the beach, and all of these like condos that are empty were being put up, and I was like, who got time to come not be able to get to the beach because you got to drive through these raggedy condos? I mean, they weren't raggedy.
And it look ugly too, and it's like these ugly looking buildings. You know.
Well, do you live in a pink house?
No, I don't. I live in an orange house. It's actually really hideous. That was my uncle's fault. He decided to paint. We live in a family apartment building, and he lives on he owns the two upstairs apartments, and we own the two downstairs. And he decided one day that he wanted to paint the two upstairs apartments blue, but not the two downstairs apartments. No, orange, sorry. And ours remained this kind of grayish, old, dusty blue. So up the top of the house was this bright, vibrant orange, and the bottom was like this blue. And then we had to buy the same color and paint it. It was a mess. It has nothing to do with the book or the Caribbean. It just has to do with.
But everybody got a pink house, though, right? I mean,
there's a lot of pink houses on my street. Like, you know, these older ladies, for some reason, they like pink houses.
Simon Pink too is like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
What is that?
Always
Your
something.
house looking like the inside of somebody bowels or something.
But yeah, like even in the book, they show it when they're buying all the land from the neighborhood that they live in toward the end to build the new hotel. Like that's something I never thought about because I don't live in an area that would be like thought out to build a hotel on. But people are losing their homes,
Right.
being told that they're being given a lot of money for the land, which is like really cheap to the person who's buying it.
Right.
And like
But
that's
then
level gentrification.
but you don't have that generational wealth anymore because you can't keep it in the family. I think there should be more islands. I think well, I know in Tortola, which is the British Virgin Islands, there used to be a stipulation that you would have to partner with someone from the country in order to own land. And I think islands that have that kind of exchange at least allows some control, right? Because at least someone from the island can benefit. However, that goes back to the classism piece, right? There's only so much wealth, and it's like a small number of families that are, usually taking care of their children and would be the ones prospering from that exchange.
Yeah, like the son who owns the hotel that Margot works at, and how his family owns a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of shows like certain demographics in the islands are the ones who own, because they're locals too, right? They're white people, but they're white locals. And in Trinidad, we have that situation too, where oddly enough, not just white people, but we have also a very small Syrian minority, and they are descendants of immigrants who came like in the mid 1900s, and I don't know what they did. They had some kind of privilege, and basically they own everything. Like literally, they own everything. And it's ridiculous. Like they own almost every big business. And you would come to Trinidad, and the majority of the people that you're seeing, like 50-50 Black and Indian people, but we don't own things in the way that they do. And it's like it's a very interesting, because in the Caribbean we have the opposite of the America, where the majority is the exploited and the minority is the one at the top. And that's been that way since slavery, right? When you had the color hierarchy thing. So it's really interesting, and that's why I kind of get a little annoyed with Americans sometimes, because they try to they use that whole minority majority thing, and they apply it to everybody everywhere else in the world. And I'm like, but in Trinidad is the majority. The majority groups are not minorities, and people of color are not only minorities, only in certain countries like America, but not like in the Caribbean. And then like minorities are the one who actually have power in the Caribbean, not majorities. So it's a really interesting contrast and critique to that whole narrative of the majority group versus the minority group.
Yeah, it's like all just after effects of colonialism.
Right.
It literally is all based on colonialism and the fact that white people came to the Caribbean and they had the upper hand to begin with, and even though they're the minority, they continue to have the upper hand. Oh, somebody said contemporary plantation society. I love that. That sounds exactly right.
It is that.
Wait, the CHD in the Bahamas, is it still true that you have to have somebody with you, like you can't be an outsider to buy land? Because I thought that was the case in the Bahamas too. Oh, are they gone? Never mind. Well, if you come back.
If you return to us.
Yes. Yeah, I just think that was one of the biggest things that I had to not unlearn, because I still see myself in the majority, even though, that is not the case ever wherever I've lived. But it was like a hard conversation. And then that gets into, well, you're not Black, right? And so, yeah. But I think that whole experience of being a part of the majority but still marginalized is hard for other people to understand, because seeing people who look like you and could have power might not always be the case, but in some cases it could be, really does a mind I was gonna cuss. When you go to another country and people are treating you different in a negative way because you're the color that would have been the norm where you're from.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I've had that experience. Like, I only ever experienced racism once, and that was when I went to Atlanta, Georgia, and this little white girl called me and my family a bunch of Indian hicks in an elevator.
In an
Indian
elevator.
hicks. Yeah, so basically the elevator stopped and it opened out, and she was about to walk in, and she stopped and she told her family, "We don't want to be stuck with a bunch of Indian hicks." I didn't hear what she said, and my
what
mother
does
didn't
that
hear.
even mean?
A hick is a derogatory term used against poor white people, so she called us Indian poor white people. I don't know. So and maybe somebody used that term against her, and rightfully so, and she probably just wanted to use it back against somebody. But basically what had happened was she said that, and then the elevator closed, and I was like, wait, what did she say? And my cousin said, oh, she called us Indian hicks. And my mother was ready to turn the elevator back and go back up for she, and I cannot repeat what my mother said on this
Go,
live stream.
mommy.
It would require my use of Trinidadian Creole, and it's not very respectable to repeat such words on the internet. But it was really interesting and eye-opening for me because I'm from a majority group, right? There's two
Right.
majority groups in Trinidad, which is Black people and Indian people. So I've never really experienced what it's like to not be the norm and to not stick out. So to kind of have that experience for the very first time, I was like 20 or 21. It was just so mind-boggling to me. I was like, wow, you know, this is what these people on Twitter have been talking about all the time.
I feel like it's the same for me because in the Caribbean, obviously, I'm white passing. Like before, when I had relaxed here, especially, you would. And my dad is like white, so being white passing in the Caribbean, I had a very different experience from, say, like my mom. People would just call me white. They would exclude the fact that I'm half Black. And so, growing up in the Caribbean, I had obviously privilege, looking the way that I do. But then it was coming to Canada was the first time that people would start calling me Black, and I'm just like, what the fuck is happening?
Who am I?
And then that's when the whole like we don't really see like biracial people in the Caribbean, like how they're impacted by that kind of stuff. So seeing Tandy's experience being like she's mixed, and there's certain parts of her that exalted and certain parts of her that aren't, and seeing like that sort of impact was like really interesting to me specifically, especially with the hair thing.
Don't you think like in the Caribbean though you're either Black or you're white?
Oh yeah.
Or I mean, I guess in
Trinidad,
Trinidad,
for sure, it's like Black or white, or like I guess they don't use
Trinidad. It's like you're Black or Indian or you're mixed. Those are our three identities, and then we have different categories for different kind of mixed people. So, Paige, for example, if you come to Trinidad, people will call you a red girl.
Yeah, as I was gonna say, like red skin.
Yeah. So like that. So if you're a light skin mixed person, then you're red skin. If you're a Syrian, obviously you're a Syrian. If you're a Chinese, you're a Chinese. But like mainly in Trinidad, the three main kinds of people you're expected to find that wouldn't stick out is Black, Indian, and mixed.
Paige, you would be clear skin in the Virgin Islands.
We use all of these terms. I don't even clear skin, red skin, all of it, brown skin.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. However, you would be clear skin.
I found interesting though there was a point where Tandy, somebody called her coolie girl. And coolie is such an interesting word. In Trinidad, somebody who's half Black, half Indian, we call them Dogla. And in Guyana too. But because Indians are not so populous in other parts of the Caribbean, they don't really have that term. Like I've noticed some Jamaicans and they ask, what does Dogla mean? And I have to explain to them, oh, it's a half Black, half Indian person. So I wasn't surprised when I saw that nobody was calling Tandy a Dogla or seeing her as a Dogla in Jamaica, even though if she was living in Trinidad, people would call her a Dogla. But it was interesting that the woman called her coolie at one point and kind of like sort of, you know, took away from her Blackness for a little bit and just called her coolie because she understands that she's mixed. And also coolie is an interesting word because in basically all Caribbean countries, it is just a term used to identify Indo-Caribbean people, right? People who are descendants of Indian indentured laborers. In Trinidad, it is a racial slur. do not call an Indian a coolie in Trinidad. So it's really interesting. It's kind of like the whole chicken curry chicken thing. Like,
Yeah, because in Barbados we have specifically people who like you can buy stuff from them and pay it back in increments, and we call them coolie men because obviously they're Indo-Caribbean. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's like you can't use that term in Trinidad because we see that as like basically the N word for Indians. But like in Guyana, it's not. And I had a friend who was telling me a story about a girl from Guyana who came to work with her, and the girl was talking about some Indian girl she met, and she kept referring to the girl as a coolie, and everybody around her was getting riled up like, that's like if you're saying like the N word, normal. So like.
Yeah.
Just beware of certain words in different countries when you're traveling.
So it's so interesting because I think we don't call people what they are because it needs to be these rigid categories, right? So like white people who are from the Virgin Islands are called Frenchie. They might not be from France, but if they grew up in the Virgin Islands, they become Frenchie. But some Frenchies don't want to be called Frenchies because they're usually poor Virgin Islanders, right? And so they want to differentiate and be, Dutch or whatever. And it's just like, you're white, you're Frenchie.
Yeah, and I feel like it plays into colorism as well. The fact that we have all these names for different like levels of skin lightness.
Yeah, and also Trinidadians Indo-Trinidadians have a tendency to actually use the word coolie when they're referring to lesser Indians. So more dark-skinned Indians or Indians who are a little bit more ratchet or whatever, or poor, like that they use the word coolie to refer to them. And I've always found that to be very interesting. And as you said, it's like the different names for different colors and different appearances when it's not really a race. Like red isn't a race, right? It could be red. Once you have light skin, you know, in Trinidad, it could be red. It doesn't for a particular heritage, but it becomes a racial category, and it's so strange. Like colorism is weird. Colonialism real fucked us up, y'all.
I have a question for y'all, man. Do y'all have like the stereotypes about red skin people being like
sexual and stuff?
Sexual and stuff. Like the women are like told like they're like sexual people who like sort of like control darker skin men. Like all that. Okay,
they manipulate men and they cheat and stuff. I was having a conversation on Twitter just the other day with one of my friends. Who's in Trinidad, we have some people who are basically mixed with everything. So they're like Indian, Black, Chinese, basically Portuguese, French, Dutch, Amerindian. She's like that, and she's red as red. People see her as red all the time, so she's kind of venting. And I was like, you know, the whole idea that red and is sexual and stuff comes from slavery, with like the mulatto woman being seen as the hypersexual ideal combination of black and white and all that kind of stuff. So it's like we're taking all these problematic ideas about sexuality from slavery and we're putting it on to certain women and men who are red get treated differently. Like red women get called out and catcalled all the time.
Oh yeah.
And it's ridiculous.
But I think there's an overall stereotype that Caribbean women are very sexual. And I don't know if that comes from people seeing Carnival and how we celebrate.
Oh, that's why I'm going to start talking about how Western people talk about Carnival and Kadooment and all. It's a problem.
Whole another issue, right? But I feel like anytime because I usually try to identify upfront that I'm Black Caribbean, and people are like, oh, I'm like, oh God, I know what you're thinking is disgusting. Yeah.
It's interesting too because that stereotype is also racialized because Black women have historically in the Caribbean always been stereotyped as sexual. But like if you look at the history of Indo-Caribbean women, it's been the opposite. Indo-Caribbean women have been stereotyped as respectable and clean and pure, and they need to be protected, especially from Black men and all that kind of stuff. And that has actually not been the case historically because during indentureship, when Indians were first coming, there were much less Indian women coming than men. So the Indian women had a lot of control and a lot of ability to negotiate their sexuality and stuff. So it's interesting how they kind of flip that stereotype and use it to almost like a kind of divide and rule thing. Like the Black women are like this and the Indian women are like this. So I think Caribbean women, different Caribbean women in different islands or different class backgrounds and different ethnicities are imbued with different ideas of sexuality that all kind of coagulate to create this narrative that kind of functions to keep the society in check. And it's just really sick. It's really sick.
Another symptom of colonialism, right?
Oh yeah, it all is. Yeah, because in the beginning of the book, when Margot's with the first tourist guy that we see her with, and she describes him like playing out a fantasy that he would never attempt from when he's at home. So it's also that's another like idea of exploitation, that they'll come and exploit the women in the Caribbean because they provide a fantasy and it's safe because they're going to leave eventually.
CHD 1648 is back, y'all.
Yo.
Let me see.
So what else? What else do we have? Do you guys have any questions in the chat?
I love the fact that we just went on to complain about the Caribbean for like a solid 20 minutes.
And we stopped talking about the book.
However, please book a flight and a stay in your respective Caribbean islands. We do enjoy visitors as long as you don't exploit the people. You know?
Yeah, like don't come and ask people to touch their hair and
Lord.
you know, don't come and expect like a black woman to braid your hair or something. Like you go to the hotels and they're always wearing braids. Like
oh my God.
It's so interesting and weird.
What's your question? I thought you had a question.
No, I was saying, let me see if I have anything that we haven't spoken about yet in it. Spoke about colorism. I feel like we covered everything that I wrote about.
The braid. Yes.
Honestly, I'm like forever scarred by seeing little white girls running around with braids in their hair.
Yeah,
and
it's
sunburn.
like
Don't forget the sunburn.
Always
the
sunburn.
braids and the sunburns are like almost like souvenirs, basically. It's weird.
It's true. Going back on a flight from Barbados, like if I'm coming back after being home, that is basically the entire flight.
Oh God. Yeah. That's fascinating. As a Muslim African, I see so many similar problems. Yeah, I mean, like colonialism effed over the world, and everything that history doesn't exist in a vacuum. All of the problems that we face, every single issue that we have, and I tell this to people all the time, and they get mad. White people caused it. Right? You know, they came and they started something, and then they left, and then now we have to deal with it, and we have some accountability in it too. But ultimately, it started because of what they did. Sucks.
Or when you think about a lot of the islands haven't really been independent for that long.
Yeah.
Or not independent at all.
Yeah.
But don't always get the resources that they need from the home country.
Also very
Let's talk about hurricanes coming through and people being without the necessary resources to live.
Yeah.
And because it's an island and it's out of the way, people tend to forget about it just as quickly.
Unless they want to come onto the hotel. Unless they want to have a trip.
I love that name. That is
that looks. I'm just imagining a conch with the rubbery skin. Is that why they're called?
Well,
a conky Joe, because the leathery skin. After a while, you know.
Conky Joe. Oh my God. I'm now seeing it, yo. I was confused as to what y'all was talking about. Then I went into the chat and I was like, oh, Conky Joe.
I'm going to use that. Oh, you old conky Joe.
I love it.
But, you know, come to think of it, there are some minorities too. Because we were talking about how some minorities are powerful, but there are some minorities in the Caribbean too who also are like marginalized. Like in Trinidad, Chinese people face so much discrimination. So much. And I feel like throughout the Caribbean, they are just stereotyped in this really awful, disgusting way. I had to say that because I was thinking about how I was saying that the minority is powerful, but not all the minorities are powerful.
It also depends on like when people have come to the Caribbean islands.
Right. Because I think sometimes there's a little bit of fetishization that happens because people are curious because it's a small population, but then what ends up happening is that they marginalize them and treat them like, oh, you're doing this. You know, I was having a conversation with a friend, and I did not realize that China was a part of the slave trade in terms of spices. And I was
Yeah,
just like,
they had something to do with it. Yeah.
and so I was just like, oh, well, that makes sense why Shannon oil. Do you have Shannon oil? It's like this little bottle of,
Shelling oil.
yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. I
But
don't think
that's
I
just,
ever like used it before, but I know what you're talking about.
yeah, but that's not indigenous to the Caribbean. That came from Asia somehow, right? And so it's just like, that makes so much more sense. By the way, I did my ancestry. This is really going off the wagon.
That's
now.
fine.
I
I want to
know.
hear. I want to mind your business.
And that came up, you know, it's just, which is why the conversation was happening, because I'm 4% Chinese, 1% Korean. And I was like,
that's so interesting.
what?
Yeah.
So that's my little random fact about Linnell.
But it makes sense because before Indian indentureship happened.
We lasted so long.
Tiger Balm. Yeah.
Oh my God, Tiger Balm.
Yeah. Don't put
Just
it on
saying
your
that.
skin, folks. It'll burn you. You need a little Vaseline.
Oh my God. I love the way you're just giving out advice now.
I'm turning into my mother. Do you have bush tea?
Yeah.
Which is just lemongrass. Okay. Sajid, we want you to come back. What's happening?
He's trying.
Okay.
But yeah, like bush tea, I feel like it wasn't something like.
What's happening? I'm
You
gone?
were gone and now you're back, I
I'm back.
I
just, like,
appreciate
haunting his own
everyone
channel.
that's hanging out on with us because, Lord, this has been interesting. We have bush medicine. Tell me more.
I feel like. Oh, Sajid. Oh my God. I feel like in Barbados, like bush tea isn't a thing. Yeah.
We have bush medicine too, fever grass.
Fever grass.
I never use those things. Fever grass, yeah. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I've heard the name always. I'm not going to go and pick no grass and boil it and drink the water for me to get more sick. So I don't know what fever grass is. And I don't want to know, but apparently it's worked for some people, so more power to them. I will go to my doctor and get my clinical colonial medicine, my Panadol and my antibiotics and whatever. And live my life.
Oh my God.
No.
Panadol.
I made my mom bring Panadol up for me here. Like, it works better than what I would have thought.
Panadol is like the go-to. Any kind of pain, any kind of problem. My mother is just like,
I don't even know what Panadol is.
Panadol.
It's literally just the Caribbean version of like Tylenol.
Oh.
It's probably that same thing, but apparently Panadol does work on me better. So
Yeah, it is.
My mom.
I think it's a placebo. I think it's a placebo.
You think so? Oh, you're being funny. I get it.
I don't know, because like I would take it, and then I don't know. I just feel like maybe if I don't take it,
he's haunting his own channel.
I need to try this Panadol now because everybody's like it's a gift.
The headache will just.
Also, Jamaica has bush tea too.
Oh,
Sajid, you have to disconnect and start again.
You know, there's this thing where it's like take the Panadol and.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
I'm literally deceased right now. I cannot. Whew.
Everybody that's in the chat, we really appreciate.
We do. He's slightly here again.
I'm here. Am I in real time?
You are in real time.
Oh my gosh, this is so amazing.
So So I moved to make a motion that it's not on your channel next time.
That's a good idea. I support that
Okay.
proposition. I support that. I support that.
That's so funny. Yeah, we don't have bush tea really in Barbados. I feel like none of those like herbal remedy stuff, or maybe it was just my mom that did not believe in that herbal remedy stuff. It was like our Ascension relatives that used to give me like this tea, and they would make stuff to rub you down with, and I knew what it was, but it works.
What's the white rock thing? Like when you have like a respiratory infection, you put it in like a baby sock and then you pin it to you, and it's like someone knows what I'm talking about.
Somebody knows what you're talking about because they just said yes in the chat.
Tell me, Alicia, what is it called? Because I can't remember.
All we had was Vicks. Everybody will walk around
like
Vicks, yes.
It was a
My father lives on Vicks.
version it was like a crystallized version of Vicks, but it was more powerful because you couldn't put it on your skin, else you get 3rd-degree burns. So you put it in a little baby sock and pin it to you so you could, open up the nasal passages.
Did y'all have like those like? Everybody called them inhalers, but it's like it has like the little menthol thing in it, and you would like shove it up your nose to breathe when you were sick.
Yes.
Okay,
I had that. Yeah.
No,
I swear I was addicted to that shit when I was a teenager.
Like a little cylindrical thing. my dad used to use it all the time, and I tried it. It just never used to work. I had the little
inhaler.
The pump thing, but I think that's more of a universal thing where you like pump out the snot from kids' nose, the kind of big bubble thing.
The neti pot. No, you're talking about the little. It's like a little suction thing.
Yeah.
And it was pink.
Mine was green.
Oh, I didn't know it came in different colors. Everybody who had one either had maybe it came from the hospital. Now that I'm thinking about it, it was either pink or blue. So maybe that's why we only had pink ones.
I love how we got on the topic of medicine in the Caribbean. Guys, we're really hitting it all.
Listen, you need to get some bush tea. I want both of you to get some bush tea. I was gonna say I could send you some, but I think you can't.
Where am I gonna get bush tea in the whitest part of Toronto? Please explain.
My mom is growing it, so when you come to Booknet Fest,
yes, okay, I'm done. Have we picked out our next book, guys?
Oh, Connor, stop asking us these questions. I feel attacked.
We haven't.
But you have to list 2 extra months to get this book done.
That's like mostly my fault though.
Okay, so let's pick. Do you have suggestions? I'll hook you up. Ooh, yes. What are you hooking me up with?
This sound like it's selling drugs up in the comments. I have Caribbean books. Hold on.
Please, somebody else choose because I technically chose this book. So it's somebody else's turn now.
Oh. What about I just bought, is it called A New Something World something? It's supposed to be an anthology. Let me see.
I have no Caribbean. I only have like Caribbean Canadian books for myself right now.
I think I showed you all this one.
Oh yeah.
A collection of like different. It's really cool. It's like poetry and short stories and essays from different Caribbean authors all across the region. Okay. Then I have this one, which is like the only book that I know of that is about like. Are y'all seeing me?
Okay. Yeah.
It's the only book that I know of about an Indo-Trinidadian Muslim family because most Indo-Caribbean people are Hindu. So like it's really difficult to see like stuff about Indo-Muslims. Then I have this collection. It's also basically like a collection of...
I think I bought that one. So Many Islands?
Yeah, but it's not just the Caribbean though. It's like all over. So it's the Caribbean, Polynesia, Mediterranean, Indian Ocean. And then I have Roxane Gay's novel that I never finished, An Untamed State, which is set in Haiti.
Oh my god, that'd be cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't read it
I feel like with Roxane, first of all, Caribbean authors don't do trigger warnings, so let's just put that out there.
Yeah, they don't.
What is that one from Roxane Gay about? Oh, Connor, we're sorry.
This is about a woman who's Haitian American and she goes back to Haiti to visit her parents. And her parents are like part of the small upper class in Haiti. And basically, like, she gets kidnapped by like a gang.
Oh.
And then they keep her hostage, and it's real. I couldn't finish it
sweating.
because there was like very explicit scenes of
Oh God,
assault.
no.
Can we
This
try to
is
find a happy Caribbean book? Please,
yeah.
guys?
This is why we had to stop 7 killings because
That was intense. That was a lot.
Every few chapters, somebody was being assaulted.
Mhm.
I think we should talk about Caribbean trauma porn because that seems to be a thing too. Because it's like all of the famous Caribbean books are always about some kind of trauma and some kind of struggle, and they're living in a hut and they pour and they getting sexually assaulted, and it's like
Oh my gosh.
that's not everybody's experience, you know. But I feel like, you know, A, you're trying to address issues, and B, you're also trying to appeal to this gaze that, you know, people of color are always struggling and oppressed. So that's our story, and that's what we have to contribute to the world. So yeah, I mean,
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I also have like a lot of books, but that are Caribbean American, like The Poet X and stuff
Such
like
a
that.
good read. I'm reading right now. I haven't finished it, so don't ask me too much. But with The Fire on High, her follow-up.
Ooh, I love that cover.
And
it looks so good.
Tomorrow I will be recreating it for my blog.
Nice.
But the main character is Puerto Rican.
I feel like YA, especially, it's more of a like immigrant experience. So it's people who are leaving the Caribbean.
I have some YA recs. I don't think I mentioned this to you all. Oh, I did. I'm a judge for the Codeboot Award for Caribbean Young Adult Literature. So there's a lot of Caribbean Young Adult books. But if you go into the stores, they're on a rickety shelf in the back and they're overpriced. So like nobody's talking about them. But like I could probably do a whole video recommending at least like 5 or 8. So I might probably do one. I might probably do one of that. And they're not very trauma driven either. Some of them are like fantasy and sci-fi and stuff.
Oh, that'd be cool. It'd be cool to read like a fantasy. Like what's the middle grade series? Tracy Baptiste's middle grade series.
Oh, Jumbies.
Oh, Jumbies.
Yeah. I want to read that series.
Yeah.
I think I bought 2 of the books because they're on Book Outlet.
She has such a Trinidadian name. I feel like I know so many Tracy Baptiste.
Yeah.
Tracy. Miss Baptiste, where your daughter? Miss Baptiste, where your daughter?
She didn't come to school today?
Oh my god.
So that one, I feel like that was on our list, Jumbies.
Yeah, because remember we were gonna do like adult YA middle grade, like try to switch up.
Right. So someone CHD said they want to read So Many Islands.
So we just take that as our next one.
Yeah. Oh, that's not this one.
Wait, I feel like my cover looks different.
Yeah, there's 3 covers. There's 3 covers.
Oh, someone said this life makes me so happy. Thank you. Oh,
it makes me happy too. I just wish my internet wasn't such a dick.
But let's be real. If I was in Barbados, I'd be having the exact same problem. So at least it's authentic.
Oh, and someone said they would watch a Caribbean YA rec video. I agree.
I'll do that definitely.
Oh wait, did you guys read Hurricane Child?
No, but I want to.
No.
That's in. Oh no, that's also middle grade, but that's in set in the Virgin Islands, which often doesn't happen. Nobody knows where we are because we're dust on a map.
Yeah, I always tell people like Trinidadians are like, we're dots on a map. I'm like, compared to the other islands, Trinidad is like, a blob.
Like,
yeah, we're a blob and everybody else is dots.
Yes, the Virgin Islands definitely a dot. Is dust. It's smaller than a dot.
Yeah. And Barbados, you all just stick out there by yourselves.
Start doing our own thing. Always missing the hurricanes because they don't come.
That's what I'm about to say.
We miss the hurricanes too. They don't come and hit us either. So in Trinidad, we have a saying, God is a Trini. Because
rude.
Because the hurricanes come and they hit Tobago.
Oh my God. That is amazing.
Oh my gosh, don't say that, because my family, I feel like, is still trying to put their lives back together, so I shouldn't be laughing about it.
Yeah, it is
But
a
when I
tough.
went to visit, I had an asthma attack because of all of, like, so I was just like, I won't be coming back for a little bit. Sorry, guys.
My friend from Antigua, her aunt from Barbuda lost her entire house and she had to move back to Antigua. It was awful.
Yeah. Lol.
Oh, yes, the Bahamas does not always get hurricanes. I feel like, are you sure about that? I'm arguing with somebody outside.
I have to critique your idea, your notion that the Bahamas get hurricanes.
Isn't that such a Caribbean thing? Prove it. I don't believe you.
I feel like this
My
is
island is getting more hurricane than your island.
honestly, this is Caribbean Twitter live right now. Want to argue between each other?
Oh, yeah. Did you see the recent debate that Guyana is not in the Caribbean because it's not an island? I was like, y'all need to like go back to school and do a Caribbean studies class again. It's no.
Trying to explain who's a part of the Caribbean to non-Caribbean people is so exhausting.
But then also
Yeah.
in the Caribbean, what you're taught differs based on
Yeah.
your colonial. Because remember, we had that whole argument as well as what books, like what islands would count in the books we read.
But then we have to break it down like Spanish, American, French.
Yeah.
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 But I mean, I feel like for me, all of the islands are Caribbean, plus the other it's really what people identify as, in my opinion. And all people from all of the islands identify as Caribbean. Some Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Cubans. Some of them might not. They might prefer Latinx or Hispanic or whatever.
Right.
But a lot of them still do identify as Caribbean. In Haiti, they do as well. And in Guyana, they identify as Caribbean. In Suriname, they identify as Caribbean. In Belize, they identify as Caribbean. And I think, you know what, if they identify with the experience and if their history is one that basically is a Caribbean experience, I think that then that's valid. But then there's other mainland countries that wouldn't identify with that experience, like the Spanish speaking countries and whatnot. And then there's also like diasporic communities in those countries. Like for example, in Costa Rica, there's a whole large English speaking community that's a descendant of Jamaicans, and they've been there for generations, and they consider themselves part of the Caribbean even though they're not in a country that is part of the Caribbean. Strange. And that just kind of shows that we're not just defined by geography, we're really more so defined by history.
Yeah, it's the same in Toronto as well. We have a huge Caribbean community that considers themselves Caribbean over Canadian. Specifically in Toronto.
So I feel like second generation Caribbean people have they're in a peculiar place because they might identify with the experience, right? But never necessarily experienced the island or island life.
It's like I guess kind of a unique experience because it's like you're growing up in a house where your parents are from that island, so they're teaching you all the values, all the kind of culture and stuff, and then you're going through a world where that is your background, that's your history, that's your history always has a way of affecting you where you are, and you're always a child of immigrants and that kind of stuff. So that in itself is a Caribbean experience, but it's a Caribbean experience that happens outside of the Caribbean. Then it makes you question, is it really a Caribbean experience or is it an American experience or is it a both experience? It's weird.
Especially because I feel like if they went back to like the Caribbean country that their parents are from, they'd be viewed as tourists.
Right.
Yeah.
Have the accent maybe.
Foreigners, yeah.
Whenever I go back to visit, because I moved away from St. Thomas in 95, 96, one of those years. Whenever I come back, they treat me like, oh, do you need directions? No, but yes, I do because because this was not here when I was living here. But like my brother, he was born on the island, but he grew up in Florida. So when you ask him where he's from, he says Orlando, and every time I want to scratch him hard.
Yeah, because and that's the thing. it's different for like each individual too, I guess, and how people perceive you too. Like for example, my cousin, she grew up here and she moved to the States when she was 22. She grew up in the same house with me, but she's very, very light skinned and she wears the hijab. And because of that, she looks Arab. So like when people see her away, they don't think, oh look, a Caribbean girl, or anything like that. And she doesn't, she has such a very particular experience and she's been there for so long that for everybody it's just different, it's
Yeah.
like, and it's just weird because it's like every person has such a unique experience, even though there's similarities, and then it would just inform your identity to the extent where you might not have been born on the island, but you identify as a full-fledged Jamaican, but your brother who was born and raised there for 40 years would say, well, I'm from Tampa,
Right.
Yeah.
At that point, we call you a Yankee.
Yeah, we call people a Yankee too. When people come back from the States, we would tease them, be like, how you talking like a Yankee? So, and you only went for 2 weeks.
Because it's called code switching. Oh,
Yeah.
True, man.
I actually, I rolled over my toe.
Oh no.
The Two Carolines in book says, I feel like even when your parents go back after they've been here for too long, they're viewed as foreigners, which is also very true. There's like this huge thing on like Twitter of being Caribbean, being able to identify as it is, you have to have had the like experience of living in the Caribbean. I feel like people who live in the Caribbean feel that. If you haven't lived on the island, you can't really identify as it because you haven't had those experiences you have growing up on the island versus from.
I don't necessarily. You go ahead. We were like, both go ahead. Okay, fine, I'll go. I was going to. Okay, I forgot what I was going to say. So you go ahead.
But it's weird though, because do other communities do that? Like if you're Latinx, if you don't speak Spanish or some variation of Spanish, are you no longer Latinx? No, right? Like, so it doesn't make sense. I think it's like a short-term view because at that point it would be about culture, right? Versus potentially ethnicity. So, and I think if you're not willing to be nuanced in, like Sajid said, to someone's experience, then you're almost isolating a whole group of people. Because if I ever had kids, which I'm not, they might consider themselves Caribbean because of an extension of me, right? So I just think it's weird. How are you telling people what they are and what they are not?
I feel like some of it is. Go ahead, Sajid.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that it's just kind of like because we grow up here and because we're kind of taught that you are where you're from, and that's the extent to your identity. Like where you grew up is where you're from, where you're born is where you is from, and that's who you are. So it's like when somebody is born and raised in the States and they just talk American and they come back and they have all the habits and perspectives and ideas of Americans, you don't want to see them as a Trinidadian, really. You're just kind of like, you're not one of us. So I think that's a huge reason why Caribbean people kind of have this rejection towards them. And I also feel like Caribbean people have a tendency to just be kind of annoyed because of the way that different Caribbean cultures coagulate in the diaspora. So for example, like when Cardi B sang that song and she was singing like a Jamaican, but she was singing that she's a Trinidadian because she's Trinidadian and Dominican, but she's singing in a Jamaican accent. And Trinidadians was like, you not sounding like a Trinidadian. Why are you trying to? And then there's this video of Nicki Minaj trying to talk Caribbean and she's talking in a Jamaican accent. And it's like, that is not a Trinidadian accent. And it's like, I guess some of them, because they grew up in the diaspora and Jamaican culture tends to be the most popular mainstream culture, all of them would kind of gravitate towards that. So when the non-Jamaican Caribbean American people kind of, define Caribbean culture in that rigid way, or they act like that, like Cardi and Nicki, some of us might be a little bit annoyed and be like, but that's not how Trinidadians are.
Right.
And also they have this habit that I've noticed. I don't know if you all noticed it, but like, Caribbean American people are more likely to have island girl in their Instagram bio than people who are actually from the island.
Yeah.
And I always found that to be so interesting because I would never put island boy in my bio. But
I feel like part of it is too, like people from the Caribbean, like a lot of people don't have the opportunity to leave the Caribbean. So they're very protective of that identity and having to live on the island because they see people who live overseas as being more privileged than them.
Mm-hmm.
And the accent does factor, you're right.
Yes.
It does.
Listen, sometimes I'm like, ooh, can you repeat that? My ears are no longer trained to pick up all of the extra syllables.
And I feel like the accent identifies you as Caribbean. Like as soon as I land in Barbados and step off that plane, my accent is back. So that people can identify me as coming from the island.
It's very strange because I've been living in America so long, unless someone is speaking to me in Creole, like I can't just turn it on. So as soon as I hit the Virgin Islands, whether it's British or the US, it comes right back. But if I'm with my sister, it's hard for me to like connect as quickly. Because we use our American accents all the time. I've been brainwashed.
Code switching is so weird. It's strange.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting too.
But necessary, right? Because I think our accents are, for some people, are so harsh.
Yeah, they're not palatable.
Yeah, so it's like, what are you saying? And because it's such a blend of different languages, sometimes I have a hard time even translating certain words,
phrases.
Into English, because I'm like, I know what I'm saying, but like frowsy. I was trying to.
Oh, you're feeling frowsy. Yeah.
And my boss was like, "What?" And it was like one of those moments where I was just like, "Okay, let me take a step back." I mean, I know it means smelly, but there's no like.
Wait, Americans don't say frowsy for smelly?
No.
Really?
They just say smelly or BO or something else. Yeah. Or
I thought that was a universal English word, frowsy.
Reishi is another word.
I don't know that one.
I never heard that one.
It's the same thing as frowsy, but a step above. Like, it's like, oh, you smell like reishi chicken or something, which means you smell real bad.
Bad. And I agree with you, Joanna. Like, is whether you like some people who grow up in Canada don't identify as Caribbean even if their parents are, just because of the way you grow up and the experiences you have. Like, especially if you've never visited an island either. I feel like that's especially when people are very specific on whether you can identify or not.
Are you responding to Joanna's?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think, again, it depends on like everybody's individual experience, because maybe I think a huge privilege too is maybe your parents had the finances and the money to carry you back on trips home. So every 3 months you're going back home to Trinidad, even though you're not from there. So you have that connection with the island, and you have that familiarity with the island or the country, and if it's not an island. And, so you identify with the nationality. But another person who might not have had that privilege of going back home mightn't identify with it so much because they just never went as often, even though both of you all are the same thing in the sense that you were born in this country to parents from that country. So it just really depends on a person's experience, how you look, how you are perceived. It's really interesting.
And even your citizenship, right? Because I think like sometimes for me, like I have dual citizenship, but I know people who put their citizenship over, say, their Caribbeanness, right? Because it's a perceived level of protection. And to be clear, I know the U.S. Virgin Islands is a U.S. territory.
I was wondering. I was like, but wait, do you all have like, because I assume that if you're born in the U.S. Virgin Islands, you're a U.S. citizen.
Yes. But I have family in the British Virgin Islands, so I have my British citizenship as well.
Well, look at you.
Man, but it doesn't matter.
How fancy.
Because, I was getting ready to get a European passport until, the whole Brexit thing. And so I held off on that. But I do have my belongers card, and that is what it is called when you are from a territory of the Queen. You're a belonger.
Belong. That is so colonial and
It is.
just very possessive and good.
Right?
You belong to
us.
me.
Okay, friends, should we choose a book, or are we going to
should.
do this offline and argue in our little group chat?
We could probably deliberate on it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think people definitely, I think one person showed
Yeah.
interest in this. And I think it's available too. You have to look at availability as well, because some books that you might get here, you might get away too. So something that could easily be at the library and all that kind of
Paige
stuff.
works for a publishing company. She gets books
Okay,
off.
thank you. But my publishing company doesn't really publish a lot of Caribbean books.
Oh,
So-
sorry.
I'll go on Amazon.
Yeah. So what I want to recommend is like, let's do like folklore, like a Nancy story.
Oh my god,
or,
Nancy, bless.
or something like along that, because
Mm.
I feel like we'll learn a lesson. But nobody's died. Oh no, sometimes people die in a Nancy. But anyway.
Yeah, but they don't die in like a gruesome.
Yeah, I feel like it's not
Right.
traumatizing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not like traumatic kind of death.
Yeah. Okay.
It could be something easier to read too, as opposed to like a Marlon James or
Oh yeah,
Napoleon
let's
is
not go with
dead.
I
Marlon
vote
James.
for
I'm
no
sorry,
more
I love
Marlon
him.
Jones.
I love him.
Yeah.
He's great live, but his books are a lot.
Oof.
I'm not gonna even try. Like I respect him for who he is, but like the size of those books alone, nah, I could.
And
I have a friend who
always
told me she read it in a day. I was like,
A
nah.
day?
She was like, yeah, I read that in a day. It was so good. I was like, how long was that day? Was that a 3-week long day?
Yeah, I think I'm still on like maybe chapter 5, and I was reading it for almost a year. So
I just downloaded the audiobook again. We'll see if I could get through it.
Okay, so we're gonna discuss offline and then tell everybody so they can participate. Oh,
Yeah.
people are leaving the chat now. Okay. They're tired.
When should we say our next live show is going to be? Should we say in another 4 months, guys?
What's 4 months from now?
August?
No, August is the beginning.
I'll be away in August.
Okay, so August doesn't work. July or September?
Yeah, July. I think July, because September is really far, and then school starting back in September.
Yeah.
Let's say July.
I'll have a lot more time to read in the summer.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so July, everybody who's here. Children of Blood and Bones already.
I started reading it, but wasn't very impressed by it. Sorry. I was very excited for it, but like the writing was kind of very obviously based on a specific TV show.
Which one? Tell me, because I have
Avatar,
it on my.
The Last Airbender.
I'm glad you know.
No, I know that's it, but I actually never watched Avatar. So when I was reading it, I didn't.
It was very based on it.
I didn't make any connection.
I have the graphic novels. I loved it.
I used to watch it now and again, but like I never kept up with it, so I don't know the story. But I still didn't really care much for CBB. I didn't finish it either.
Yeah, and I was so excited for it too, so it was kind of disappointing.
Yeah, it was really hyped though. Like it got a lot of like marketing.
Did you see that billboard across from the Black Panther premiere?
Really?
No.
Huge billboard. They paid so much money.
Tommy gonna be rich.
Well, she made millions for her.
As long as she stopped arguing with people.
Nora Roberts.
Yeah, she tried to come for Nora Roberts, and Nora Roberts was like,
oh my god.
Out of all of the people you could argue with, I don't.
Nora Roberts secured her wig and was like, you can't touch this, sis.
I'm still shook by that.
Okay. And the thing is, blood and bone is such a common thing you see in so much titles.
Oh, they dragged her for sure about it. So, Joanna, that was a long response. No one's read it. Fully. Every time I pick it up, I'm like, oh, she thick. And I put her back.
It's a really quick read.
Is it?
Yeah.
CBB?
Yeah.
Oh.
Or maybe I just read it really quickly.
Okay. So people are now officially leaving. So I guess they're tired of us laughing at each
Rambling on
other.
about the Caribbean stuff. We got completely off the book, but I love it, guys.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
fun. It was nice. This is my first time actually speaking to you all live, so this was nice.
True. I guess like
Yeah.
voice notes on WhatsApp don't count.
Yeah, voice notes on
You're the only
WhatsApp, but
one
not
that says
live.
voice notes too.
Yeah.
Because I talk a lot and typing is really hard. My thumbs are big and I have a very protective screen that makes typing difficult. So
Oh, thank you for still being here. Okay.
Shall we say goodbye, friends, and plan for
wait.
July?
Remember, I picked out music for us to
Oh
close
my,
out.
you are absolutely ridiculous. Oh my
Wait,
god.
hold on. Let me see.
She has to play her music before we go, apparently.
I
Oh,
think
wait.
I'm disconnected. You all hearing me?
No, I hear you.
Okay.
Wait, last time, what did we play?
I don't remember what you played.
I think it was Rihanna because I love Rihanna.
Which I appreciate as the number one Rihanna stan of my household.
You're the only one? What? Of your household?
Of my household.
Oh, okay. I was like, we love Rihanna everywhere.
Riri is universal.
Yes. However, I just realized because of the copyright, I don't want us to get in trouble. Sorry.
Maybe we could sing.
Oh no, y'all can sing. I ain't singing nothing.
Let's sing our national anthem.
All hail the Virgin Islands. That's all I remember. Something
Our
of
national
the
anthem is
sea.
so weird.
I don't even. What's the Barbados national anthem?
All hail.
I remember my school song. I don't remember the national
We
anthem.
was forced to sing that national anthem every day and recite the pledge. The pledge is the
my
most
God, the
juvenile.
I pledge allegiance to the. No, that's wait.
I solemnly swear to dedicate my life to the service of my God and my country. I will honor my parents, my leaders, my teachers, my elders, and those in authority. I will be clean and honest in all of my thoughts, my words, and my deeds. I will be kind. I will
This
be
sounds
kind
like
in every.
something that like
It sounds like
people
he's
on the
becoming a
Greek.
knight.
Yeah, it's really ridiculous. I was kind in everything I do to work together with my fellow citizens for the honor and glory of my country, or some stupidness.
Well,
Thank you for giving us that.
that was
You're
a great
welcome.
education.
The unsolicited pledge that they made us say as 19-year-olds and upper six.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, so I won't be singing anymore because clearly I don't remember the words.
I genuinely cannot think of the Barbados national anthem right now, and that's bizarre to me because I definitely sang it more than 1,000,000 times.
The
Same.
Trinidadian one was ingrained in my head. I'll never forget it. But I'm not gonna sing that. Sorry.
Okay. So I guess there will be no music to close us out, which is so sad.
One love. That's
wait,
the most
wait a minute,
stereotypical Caribbean song.
Can we do a non-Jamaican song?
Okay,
also?
fine. The only other songs I think we would all know is something from Rihanna.
Which,
Yeah.
like, I'm here for.
Okay,
Work.
There, go put on "Work" by Rihanna when this live show ends, and just dance to it and celebrate Caribbean.
Spend like 10 minutes ending the live show by talking about music, and we can't end it up to now.
It's officially. Wait, is it 2 hours we've been on?
No, just under 2 hours.
Okay.
20 minutes under 2 hours.
Not bad.
Yeah. Now, if we had started on time.
Yeah, but
I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry, I did not know what I was doing. They changed up this stuff and I was confused.
6:58 came out, like, I know we're gonna be late because nobody's gonna figure this out.
Listen, I'm from the Caribbean. We don't have good internet knowledge here. My coconut Wi-Fi wasn't working. I had to go to my uncle's hut up the hill.
And then you had sea breeze to empower everything.
Yes, I got pinched by a crab and a coconut fell on my head.
Wait, you got pinched by a crab, not a conch?
Oh yeah, I got pinched by a conchy too.
Oh my God, you went through a lot to do this, man.
And we appreciate you.
Thanks,
someone is recommending Ponder Replay. I don't quite remember that one, Joanna.
How dare you?
Hey, Mr. DJ, some Ponder Replay.
Oh, yes, that's an oldie. I do
Hey, Mr. The music of all the girl Ponder dance. for wanting some more. Hey, Mister DJ, tell me if you want me. Turn the music off.
I love it. That was beautiful. So cute. I wish I was recording that actually. That would have been my new ringtone.
I'm so glad only 7 people are watching.
Don't worry, it's gonna be up for posterity. People are gonna see it.
I think we should end before we come up with something else.
Okay, guys, I love you. I will see you in July. We will continue our discussions.
Yes.
We will choose a book and let everybody know.
Okay.
Soon.
All right, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
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 Adios.